It's so interesting you say that because I find it's completely true. Like when I'm um, creating tones to play for a track or making
Yeah.
helix patches or whatever, I take a minimum of a week to try and like if I have the luxury of being able to do that, because I find that depending on the time of day, whether it's night, I'm tired or not, there's so many variables to it, and my taste completely changed. I go back to the first stuff I did, that I loved and even recorded really well, and then I go back and listen. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, that is not me anymore. My tastes have totally
Yeah.
changed. And the same thing happens with guitars. I feel like um, for me, I enjoy having a bunch of different guitars for a lot of reasons. We can get into that later, but I love the variety, but also I don't really go one to one to one to one like within a week span. It's more like I have one guitar that's my one guitar for like a month
Mm-hmm.
or something.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all I use, and I just really dig that guitar. And then I'll pick up a different guitar and be like, oh, I totally forgot how amazing this guitar is. It's like having a brand new
Yeah.
guitar all the time. It just cycles
Yeah.
through. And then, my taste might change from the 345, which is darker, to the Jazzmaster, which is the opposite end of the spectrum. And suddenly my ears changed. And then to kind of tie it in with Kemper, it's really interesting to me because you're able to pull up such a wide range of amps, just completely different amps. And you can be playing them. And if you're just scrolling through, you're going to hate probably 80% of the profiles you run into. If you're just going one to the next, to the next, to the next, because your ears are used to whatever you were playing
Mm-hmm.
before. And then
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
after that is such a drastic change. You go from a 65 deluxe reverb. It's got the cab itself, it's a very iconic sound, just the way the mids are scooped. It's its own thing. And you compare that to a plexi, or even if they're set similar gain levels, it's just very
Yeah.
different. And it can be, I think it's the mid range specifically for me that really like, whoa, that's different. And I really don't like that. Or, and then if I just stick with it for 5-10 minutes, I'm like, oh, I'm really digging this. This is great. And then the
Yeah.
reverse happens.
Yeah. It's yeah. You're 100% correct. I mentioned earlier acclimating myself like to the highs and lows of profiles, and it's for that reason exactly. It's funny you said deluxe reverb, and you said the way it's scooped, and in my head I was thinking, oh yeah, because it's mid rangey, because the deluxe verb is mid rangey only compared to a twin. You know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
Like, but it's not mid rangey at all, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
my brain immediately went to like the Fender family. But yeah, it's nowhere near as mid rangey as amp that has any significant mid range. All the Fenders are scooped. That one with its, depending on the speaker, if it's like a Jensen, you'll get the most sort of honk,
Yeah.
Whereas, and then you go to a twin or something, and it's like, oh my gosh, where did all this presence come from? And this high end with the bright switch and everything.
Yeah.
No, and that's 100%, man. I've had to feel exactly what you're describing. I'll go back to a pack. I'll be playing something, and maybe I'll get used to a tweed amp, like a tweed profile,
Yeah.
And then I had this experience where I pulled up my own 65 deluxe reverb profiles, and I was like panicking. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I released this! Oh my gosh, like why didn't anyone tell me this was so terrible?" But
Yeah.
the more I just sat there and played, after like 2 minutes, you're like, "Man, this sounds great." And then you go back to something else, and it's like, "Why is this woofy and dark and everything?" And no, the ear gets used to things, and what you're experiencing there is a phenomenon that wasn't possible in the analog world.
Right.
You could only change a speaker as fast as you could run over to something, unplug it, turn it off. And I think that's enough time to sort of reset.
For sure.
This flicking through, and man, you and me could talk about IRs, because I've made some IRs. I have a bunch more IRs in the hopper. I get a lot of requests now for IRs. People talking about IRs as being good or bad to me is like it's the most ridiculous conversation. Like